What's good, YouTube? What is going on up next, family? Danny here, back, and I have the founder of Aurum, Bryan Benson, the man. We have him on the channel with us now. We got a full AMA going on. What's going on, brother? How's it going over there?
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all good. I'm honored to be here. You guys are notorious in the space, and so I'm just fired up to chat a little bit with you, learn as much as I can from you, and share a little bit about the cool stuff that we're doing.
I appreciate that, man. I'm so happy to have you on the channel. Obviously, Aurum's been doing big things in the space. I've checked out the platform, and I was just super excited when I heard that you were available to come on the channel, join us, give us answer some questions for us, and we want to know a little bit about your background, what you've been doing in the space, where you came from before Aurum, and how this team actually came together when it was time to launch.
Yeah, so my background, I'm originally from the United States, but I lived most of my life in Latin America. So I grew up in Peru when I was, high school, elementary years. Moved back to California to go to college, university, and started working straight out of university in the mailroom at Morgan Stanley. And so this was sort of my first exposure to the traditional financial system. And I stayed there a few years. I got involved in futures trading early on, went up to San Francisco and stuff. And I found it really fascinating, but I hated the culture at the bank. The investment bank world in the early 90s, late 90s in the States was pretty hardcore. And I was more of like a California surfer dude, wearing my flip-flops and on the bike, so it was tough, and so I left the bank but I found the technology to be super fascinating. This idea that you can trade with Hong Kong and Singapore and London and with a push of a button just fascinated me. So I decided then that I was going to do a lot of stuff in that space. I really wanted to just learn how fintech worked, learn about trading, and so I did a small startup at the time. There was a mortgage sort of boom in the United States, and so I did a risk analysis tool on mortgage-backed securities. And so this was something that I learned through my appraisal business I had at the time, and I decided to sort of apply that to these mortgage-backed securities, these ETFs that were being spun up on Wall Street, and a lot of the valuations were super high and super crazy, and it was all sorts of craziness going on. And I had a small exit there. I transitioned for a few years into oil and gas tech and lived in Latin America, moved back to Latin America. And then in 2017, one of my buddies in Colombia, in Bogota, he's like, hey, you should bring cash next time you come. The Bitcoin's really cheap here. And that's how it all started for me. So I was like, damn, okay. 2017, end of 2017. So it was right before the crazy boom. And so I brought $8,000 on the plane. We went to this shady little spot. We bought the Bitcoins. We sent it to a wallet and we made 8% without doing anything. So I was like, the light went off in my head, and I quit my day job and we started trading. Wow. The next year I started doing futures trading at the end of 2018 when there was a couple different platforms that were using BitMEX. Binance launched some of their early derivatives products in the end of 2018, and I did pretty well there. But the risk parameters are totally different than in the sort of the futures trading on Wall Street and at the bank level. And so I got wrecked a few times, and it was kind of a a learning experience.
We've all been there, brother. We've all been wrecked in this space.
It was brutal for a few times, but then I made some good money and was able to make a little bit of a living out of it. And then I decided that I really liked the tech and I was going to dive into a project. And so a friend of mine headed up the innovation lab at a large regional bank in Colombia. And so we did a POC where we made a small payment app on Algorand, which is a layer 1 blockchain. Right. So I was doing this, and at that time Binance was around, but they weren't real well known in Latin America. I think we had less than 100,000 users across all of Latin America. And so I was recruited by Binance to help lead the localization effort and the expansion effort. And so I came on originally as a director of Colombia. And then I was promoted within the first 4 months to being the director of Latin America. So I helped to launch some of Binance's most successful projects in the region, Binance P2P, Binance Pay, some other futures products, derivatives products, some options products, and Binance Pool. And And yeah, it was one of the best career kind of decisions I had ever made. I feel like I have my master's in crypto now because of my Binance years. I was there almost 3 years, and left in March of 2022.
Yeah.
And I decided that I was going to work on projects outside of Binance that I could be part of founding teams and sort of, bring my skill set and my business sort of acumen to some smaller projects. And so I worked on a couple different projects before I found Aurum. And yeah, I mean, that's, in a nutshell, that's sort of where I come. I've been doing this for a little while, but, I learn something new every day, and it humbles me, each and every day is an amazing experience, and just super thankful to be a part of this industry that's really changing the world and making opportunities for tons of people,
Look, Bryan, you get wrecked enough in the space, you get your masters. We all got our masters at this.
That's right.
But
That's
man,
right.
You got a lot of experience. I'm impressed. I didn't know the background was that deep. It's really nice to know that you come from that background and you've launched a project, especially with AI blowing up in the crypto space now. We know that insane AI craze since the inception of ChatGPT. And we know that there's a lot of fakes. We know there's a lot of frauds. There's a lot of crappy apps that come now that there's AI tools that make AI apps and you can just push them out to market. So, Aurum having to be in this AI space as well, and with the trading bots absolutely blowing up in 2025, what kind of separates you guys? What kind of separates the Aurum versus, and actually having a separated, truly advanced AI bot from just these hype-driven tools that we see in the space right now? All these ones that are popping up every single day, it seems like. What kind of creates that separation?
Well, I think there's a ton of hype in this space, and it kind of reminds me of the early days of the internet, where everyone had a website and everyone was selling something on the website. And if you look forward 20, 30 years, you see that 2 or 3% of those things were actually mind-blowing, life-changing companies, Googles and Facebooks, and there was real innovation happening, but it was surrounded by tons and tons and tons of hype. And so I think in 2025 the real value of AI is less about automation and it's more about intelligence. Yeah. And what I mean by that is a true AI system doesn't just follow the markets and do TA, technical analysis. It really starts to understand them. It starts to learn from them, and it starts to adapt in real time. So it's not one of those things where it just gets really good at doing what us humans can do, but it starts to take it a step further. And that really requires super advanced models. It requires financial engineering. I think ethics is a big part of it too. It requires ethical design and infrastructure that's capable of actually scaling globally. So the way I look at it is most bots in the market really chase headlines and go for more of a marketing spin. But the real ones are sort of building quietly and are able to deliver consistently. And nothing's perfect, but we're able to do really, really well by keeping our heads down and building the best products we can.
Wow, yeah, that's an incredible answer. I mean, a lot of these huge aspects are overlooked in this space when people are launching these projects. They just want to bring something to market. They don't really think about the UI. They don't really think about what's happening with the user security, which is such a huge thing in the space. You see some of the biggest exchanges in the world now being compromised. So, when you're building this tool out, what infrastructure is actually really needed to support real-time and high-frequency AI bot execution without having that compromise of security? Because we know how essential that is in this space, especially when it comes to user data. So how do you go about that without compromising that security?
Well, very carefully is the short answer. But what that means, I think, is you have to think beyond speed, right? And so there's this thing that HFT AI bots are able to do, this high frequency trading, and clip a point here and there. And the reality is that it's not that easy. It's more about precision under pressure, I would say, and less about speed and quantity of trades, right? So real-time AI execution demands a couple different things. First of all, low latency architecture. I think that's something that's super important, because when you do see an opportunity for a trade, you can't wait in line and have it executed, minutes after you want it. It needs to be extremely fast. The second thing is predictive analysis. analytics, I think that's important to bring that out to the edge. So you can have a core, you can have an LLM that does these things, but if you have that out at the edge where the trades are actually happening, you have a huge advantage. And then, like you said, security is huge. You have to have bulletproof security, or your assets go away, your people do, and you have giant problems. And so I think that's across every interaction that we have. We're focused on security. So we're really focused on taking that dynamic liquidity routing, anomaly detection. So if things are weird, if things seem fishy, or like there's something smells weird, sometimes it is, and you have to really be able to detect that in seconds so that it doesn't affect your trades. And then I think there's failover systems as well. So sort of backups to backups. Think of it like a stop loss in a futures trade. You may think you're going to do good, but it's better to not lose everything than to stick to your guns and stick in that trade as long as you can. So this is not copy trading. We're not finding a really good trader out there and mimicking what they do. It's something different than that. It's institutional grade infrastructure that's tailored to these environments, right? So the data that's collected to these things is immense, and we as humans aren't able to understand it all in real time. Yeah. But these machines are starting to catch up and get pretty good at that stuff. And so I think it goes really more towards a institutional grade infrastructure and less about some of the gimmicky things like copy trading and these things that a lot of the projects are doing.
And it makes me think about that, because I've tried copy trading. I've traded for the past 6 years. I show people how to trade in the bull, trade in the bear. You're a trader yourself, and it makes you kind of think: is AI trading the future? Is human trading still going to be, one of the biggest parts of the trading space, or are AI bots going to fully replace that human discretionary trading, or is the future going to be around a hybrid type of model? Even from your own experience, you personally trading and you using the AI bots, what do you think? What do you think there is here? Do you think this is going to be a fully, because we all make mistakes, right? We can make mistakes. The AI can make mistakes. We can't really predict the future of the market. We could try our best, based on all the indicators and the charts and this and that. But what do you think is here? Who makes the least mistakes? And is the hybrid model something that we're going to move forward with, or is it going to be a fully AI bot model?
I don't think it's going to be fully either. I think a hybrid is not the way I would necessarily describe it, but I think it's going to be a little bit of both. And I really think that human intuition goes beyond what I've been able to see in LLM models, not only in trading, but in questions that you ask it or things that you want it to do. It seems like it's empowering us to do certain kinds of things, but it's not replacing how we think and the value of the human brain, right? I think the future, we're not going to see man versus machine and this sort of movie like thing where they're fighting us. I just don't see that happening. I see it being really man plus machine, and how that is able to add value to what we are as humans and what we're able to do. And I think that the traders and the firms who win over the next decade will be those that understand how to pair this sort of computation level, this pattern recognition, with a purpose-driven intent, right? And so I always go back to the analogy that the best traders have. It's not really an analogy, but it's just an anecdotal phrase. The best traders still have emotions, right? Their wife might have done something to them. Their kid's sick. There's emotions in there, and these things, are a problem for trading sometimes. And I think the other thing that's really a big thing is ego. Like, we as humans have these crazy egos, right? We're like, oh, I did that before, I can do it again, I'm better. It's like we get these crazy ideas in our mind. And I think one of the strengths of the AI powered bots, if we can call them that, is that they don't have any of those emotions, right? So there's this fine line between intuition and emotion, dominating us. And I think that's something that's beautiful with this technology, because we're able to sort of erase that out of it, but we're able to inject our intuition into it when we really need it. And I think it's going to be a hybrid model, but I think it's going to be man plus machine is the way I like to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's that ego, it's that emotion that always ends up being the downfall. I mean, I can just think for myself from experience. Whenever I make a big loss, then I'm chasing that loss, and I'm chasing it, and then you end up making it worse. So it's really interesting to have a system set up where there's no emotion behind it. But then you think about the certifications, the experience, the traders that have been doing this for 20, 30 plus years in forex, in indices, in commodities, and then crypto. What are the benchmarks or some sort of certificates that we could bring more legitimacy to trust AI bots as that financial tool for, the majority of people? Like when you look at, for example, copy trading, and you have an absolute crazy trader, that's been killing it for the past couple of years, that has the numbers to show for, that has the certificates, that has completed this, completed that. Where can we meet that for, AI trading bots?
That's a great question, and that's something that I'm really trying to solve for over at Aurum, and really in the last several years in this industry. And it's one of those things where I believe that we need more than numbers. We need verifiability, right? And that's kind of the whole idea of this decentralized world. And I like to think about decentralization, the way CZ, for the CEO of Binance, or the ex-CEO of Binance, used to think about it. And he always said it's a spectrum, right? Like, not everything in this space is the same level of decentralization. The Bitcoin is way more decentralized than, I don't know, Solana or like some other one that's out there, right? And so I think, we need to be careful there. And I think, standardized performance audits are one way to do this, right? It's hard to audit what someone just shows you, but if you can go to the source and be like, hey, I looked at it, I saw it, this is real, I think it's pretty easy. I think another thing in our space is real important is transparent payout structures, right? Because let's say that the bot does really well, but you're not getting your money, or you're like, you're not getting your payout the way you want to. People tend to get really upset, and then I think it also goes with real time access to historical data, and that's kind of the verifiability side of it, right? We need clear disclosures on how these models work, how their behavior is, and what their historics is. But it's just like we say at the beginning of almost any pitch, and this is not financial advice. Do your own research, and past performance is not an indicator of future returns, right? Yeah. And so that's really where the AI bots can really excel, right? Because you can see what's happening, you can see how it's worked, and you sort of extrapolate that in the future better than you can with a human trader or whatever. So I think that in the future, I see a space where third-party AI certifications become a thing, a big thing too, is almost the norm. I think, people aren't going to want to get into these kind of projects unless they have that. And they're like, hey, this has been audited, this has been certified, this is, security audit has happened, much the way that we see that with software today, or fast forward to smart contracts or blockchains, or, things that we're using on a daily basis. Well, a lot of those things have been audited, but, that being said, Wormhole was audited too, but they got hacked for $270 million, through a smart contract breach, and so I think the human side of it is also a pretty delicate thing, because humans can go rogue and go bad and do these, and that's why I think the AI thing is so powerful, is because there's going to be a lot less of that. And once we get to this point where we can certify that, users should look for teams who really show you what they're doing, and don't just say, hey, trust me over here. That's a lot of marketing jargon. But if you can show it on chain and show a certification and show that your AI bot works really well, I think it opens up data, it opens up user first design, and a lot of really important things that are going to help our industry. And so I see this as a huge win for people that use this technology. Yeah. But I also would say that it's not quite there yet, right? And so we don't have a standard for AI bots. We don't have we don't have insurance on AI bots yet. There's all these things that will probably be coming, and I think they will be the norms eventually, but we're working hard to bring those to the market.
Wow, yeah, that's an incredible answer. I mean, it's the future, right? The future is now, and things are changing, and people need to understand that. And if they want to be a part of that wave and start, making that money for trying something new, then you got to take some risks when it's brand new. And you've been involved in so much building of different ecosystems. We talked about your ex-boss CZ, being at Binance, building ecosystems at Binance. Now you're applying that over at Aurum, a whole new chapter, different company, but you're building different fintech companies in the space. You must have learned different, ingredients or something that works, because there's a lot of roadblocks in this space, and when you're launching a project, I gotta tell you, man, I've tried it before. I've looked at 1,500 plus projects in the last 365 days. I've tried launching a project in the past. It's difficult. There's a lot of roadblocks. There's a lot of FUD that comes with the space. So, what kind of ingredients did you pick up along the way to create that fintech unicorn in the Web3 space, as we like to call it?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think every founder out there should go back to this question, right, before they even start working on their project.
Yeah,
because the idea is that there's real problems in the world, right? And oftentimes I think blockchains are solutions in search of a problem, unless solving a problem that affects everyday real people, right? And that's kind of what I would extrapolate over from my time at Binance. I think the idea that to build a unicorn company, you got to solve a real problem, and it should be a global problem, right? To get to unicorn status, you can't solve a problem for people in Miami and Toronto. It's got to be you got to think a little bit bigger, right? And so we're creating AI bots for everyone, and they're available to everyone, and we're trying to make them as widespread as we can. And I think if you look at what Binance did one day, Binance solved the problem of fast crypto trading, secure, safe, fast, reliable crypto trading, with a user interface. Now, some people think the interface was too complex and had too much stuff in there, and the light version came out, right? But I think at the time, it's almost eerily similar to what we have today, because at that time there were a lot of scam crypto exchanges, right? And there were a lot of exchanges that people just didn't trust, and people are like, "Ooh, no, 𝐕𝐄𝐑𝐈𝐅𝐈𝐄𝐃, this and that, and all these things that happened." And Binance was really able to pioneer with other companies as well. I mean, I think Coinbase did a good job at it. I think there's other companies out there, Kraken, and all these different companies, but at the end of the day, trading bots are similar to that now, because you see just a host of noise out there in the market. And, now a global goal is to create a top standard company for these AI bots, just like Binance did for the exchanges, right? And I think in order to build a Web3 unicorn, you don't really chase a valuation. Like, we don't think every day, hey, how close are we to $1 billion, dollar valuation? We don't think like that at all. What we try to do is we try to build a foundation that could actually be grown onto, right? And so, it starts with solving, like I said, a real problem. And I think the real problem out there is that trading is complex for people, and people think that they can do it, but then they get wrecked and they think it's a scam, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's about building products that are not just scalable, but that they're sustainable across different cycles, right? And so, like you said at the beginning of this, you teach people how to, bear trade, bull trade. You have to be able to withstand the cycles. And so,
absolutely,
what I've noticed is it takes a real multidisciplinary team that understands not only tech but regulation. And then beyond that, user psychology for the UX, UI kind of piece of it, right? And so I guess, what I would say is, summing it up, is during my time at Binance, I saw how speed opens markets, right? Like the example that I gave of local, or maybe I didn't give it here, but I talk about it a lot. Local Bitcoins got hacked, and within 2 weeks, Binance had a P2P platform that was 10 times better than what local Bitcoins had, right? Yeah. And this is how we gain market share. But I don't think that that's enough for what we're doing at Aurum. I think we need to focus on depth. And so we're not just focused on bringing speed to market and like getting that shit out there, and excuse my French, getting that stuff out there. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's really about designing systems that don't just scale fast, but they scale the right way. And so unicorns in this space are built quietly, right? Like a lot of times, like you see what Stripe had done, you see Coinbase making these acquisitions of Bridge. These are companies that most people have never even heard of, but now they're already at these valuations. And so it's really about structure and less about noise and marketing. I think it's about building solid products with solid foundations.
Wow, that is really, really incredible. I mean, you see so many stuff happening in this space nowadays. I mean, even personally, back when I got into crypto around 2015, near the end of 2015. And back then we were using platforms like, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix series on 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐊𝐒, but that one was like the main crypto system in Canada back in like 2016 when we were buying Bitcoin and we were buying Ethereum. And like this thing was like the bank, you know what I mean? Like it was like the only way you were turning your Canadian dollars into crypto, and you were taking crypto out and turning it into Canadian dollars. It was like the only way. And yeah, like $400 million in there. Everyone was using, every Canadian was using it, and they rug pulled. You know what I mean? They pulled, they pulled the rug pull, and I ended up losing a couple $100,000 in that thing. But it's just crazy to see massive platforms. Now you have obviously the Celsius networks. Now I think Alex Masinski just got the
12 years.
Yeah, he's got his 12 years. You got the FTXs, the SBFs. You see these massive platforms rug pulling. So it puts that kind of dent in the space. It puts a stain on the space, and just crypto as a whole. People end up getting that fear put in them from stuff like this happening. People that trusted platforms as big as FTS, as big as Celsius Network, or as big as 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐊𝐒, and then their money's gone poof like that. And we're not even talking about the 𝐒𝐿𝐾onnects. I was also, back then when 𝐒𝐿Connect was when that was popping up, I was still around there, and I saw the shambles that came from that. And I think that was kind of the start of rug pulls altogether. I think 𝐒𝐿Connect was the one that kicked things off for people starting to realize, hey, yeah, we can just rug pull. We can just take people's money and just run with it, And then new platforms started to rug pull. So it's become something that, we just have to deal with in the space. And also now AI trading bots being so brand new. We've seen platforms with AI trading bots that came and went. And why do you think that is? Why do you think so many AI trading bots on the market end up being that scam or end up being that rug pull? And how do people kind of tell that red flag? What are some of the red flags that users should be kind of looking out for when it comes to these new AI trading bot platforms?
Well, let me just, before I answer the question, let me touch on another thing. If you take a look at, I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy called Bernie Madoff, but he didn't use crypto, and he was kind of the king of it. I think if you look at Lehman Brothers, if you look at Bear Stearns, if you look at like what happened in the in some of the crashes where it literally took the governments, the U.S. government and European governments and others, to bail these giant companies out because we don't call it rug pulls, but I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of dishonest people out there in the world, and my theory on it is that those kind of people are going to use the best technology because it's easiest to scam people, right? And so, I think hype is really easy to sell and it's hard to sustain, and that's it's like a con artist's dream, because you got this thing that settles instantly that you don't have a physical product for, that it's just really easy for people to do that. And so
crazy you say that, Bryan, because if you go onto my channel and if you go back to 2021, if you go back to when COVID just hit, I had an interview just like this with Alex Masinski for an hour and a half, and he was telling how he's going to change the world. You know what I mean? And then stuff like this happens. So it's like this honesty is so insane in the space. And maybe it's things that change over time in people and in companies that make them take that route. Maybe at the beginning they're all for it, they're all for changing the world, and then there's different things that happen over time, right?
Yeah, I think greed is a powerful force, and I think if you take a look at what happened with the mortgage crash, like I built a mortgage risk analysis tool. And what I tell everyone is, if all the banks on Wall Street would have used these kinds of tools, we wouldn't have had this crash. But it was so easy for them to print money by making ETFs on these mortgages that they were selling these credit default swaps for hundreds of millions of dollars between, giant banks. And we saw the ramifications of this. And so I think, as we look at, back to your question and directly as it relates to AI bots, I think most so-called AI trading bots lack a huge amount of transparency. They don't really have any governance in place like they should, like we have at Aurum. And I don't even think there's real algorithmic logic in a lot of these things, right? I think a lot of them are just, doing what they do and
going down. Yeah.
it's marketing, 101. So I think users really need to sort of take this upon themselves to ask the right questions. Who's behind this? Does the tech stack real? Does it really work? Can I audit the results? And in my experience, the most dangerous thing in this space isn't bad tech. The tech is there and it's evolving and people are building it, but it's amazing marketers that don't have the architecture underneath of them, right? Like that's really the problem here. And that's really what a con man does. He's like able to sell you a dream when there's nothing below it, right? And so what we're focused on at Aurum is building the dream from the architecture, from the foundation, from the first slab, from the first floor, and that's going to take us to where we want to be. And so, I think if you're just able to dive into the people, the tech, and verifiable results, I think you're halfway, more than halfway to where you want to be. And I think that it's kind of like with milk, the cream rises to the top, and eventually that's the way it's going to be with these AI projects as well.
Yeah, that's actually, that makes a lot of sense, the way you put it, and it makes me think like people really don't do their due diligence. They see a shiny object. They see somebody out here blabbing about this and that, and then they go and put their money towards it. But if people actually came under and looked at the architecture and actually looked into the technology behind something, then everything else on top of it is just, bells and whistles. And it really comes down to that essence of what the project is doing. And that's why I love what you're doing at Aurum, man. The transparency is there. You yourself, great guy with tons of experience in the space. So I really love what's happening there. And I kind of want to know, what steps did you kind of take for Aurum to bake that transparency into the architecture and not just other aspects of the platform, other features like the messaging and so on and so forth, but actually the architecture, the full architecture of the platform. How did you bake that transparency in there?
Well, I think it starts with the individual, right? Like I came into the project, earlier this year, and I think one of the things that's my philosophy is I'm just a humble servant of crypto. Like that's literally my motto. I say that a lot, right? And I think that transparency is really not a feature of a product. I think it has to be a philosophy that you actually live by and that is part of who you are as a person, right? And so from day one, I think it's evident to me personally, and I think to a lot of people that see us, that we're committed to this real-time data access, that we're committed to flexible user control, that we're committed to people being able to get their money out, not locking it up, not playing games with people. And I think this really leads to a traceable performance history that people can get their minds around and they can start to trust in, right? And I think it's important to notice that every major decision that we're trying to make here at Aurum, from payout logic to product availability, is made with visibility in mind. We want people to be able to trust but verify. And that's, I had an old boss many years ago that was his motto. He's like, Bryan, always in everything you do in life, trust but verify. Trust but verify. And that's how trust is earned. It's not headlines, it's not flashiness, it's not million follower YouTube channels. It's really comes down to the systems and not only headlines, right? And I think it's amazing, these kinds of platforms, to be able to give these messages out, but you have to stand behind what you're saying, and you can't walk the walk and not walk the talk, or however that one goes. Like you gotta be legit with what you're doing. And I think people can tell a lot of times, but also there's people that are able to fool people. And so at the end of the day, I think transparency is the key. It comes from a philosophical and sort of an ethical, moral side of things. And it comes from people that want to build great products and not just make a ton of money. Like if you look at someone and you see them with the Lambo marketing thing and this kind of stuff and the fancy suits and the $1 million watch, you got to ask yourself, honestly.
Where's my money going?
Yeah, I got a t-shirt, man. I'm like an H&M guy, like I wear the same t-shirt every day. I put the hat on and I go to work and I try and do my best, so.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Carrying that humbleness across into the space, it really feeds into other aspects of, your project. And it's really, really important. Like you said, guys being flashy, driving around super expensive cars and stuff, it really makes you think, like, what are these guys are doing? And I don't know if you saw the recent news with Coinbase. One of the team members came out and said that they had they received a ransom email asking for $200 million or something like that, because there were some bad apples that they had on the team, and they ended up selling user information to these guys that were looking for the ransom, and it went pretty viral. So it makes me think, like, what's your personal outlook or rule book kind of for that trust, for building a team? How do you choose the people on your team? How do you choose who's going to be a part of the project, and kind of how do you do that verification process? Like you said, trust and verify, and what's your rule book on that?
That's a great question, and that's almost impossible to get right every time. But I think there's certain principles, and yeah, I think that video with Bryan Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, coming out and saying, "Hey guys, we're not going to pay this thing. These were bad actors. We're going to do our best to mitigate all the consequences, but we can't just bend over when these guys try and blackmail us, right?" And yep. I think my idea here, and what I try to adhere to in my personal life and in my professional life, is work with people who can build things, right? Like, you can tell real quickly when you get people in there who's a builder and who's not. And I think people that can understand risk, it's really important, right? And I think people that can look beyond market cycles, right? It's pretty easy to be a genius when Bitcoin's going like this, way up. The green candles are easy to trade, but I think it's all about execution over hype. And I think the way I think of it is depth over noise, right? Noise, you'll hear first. Depth, you'll sense, and you'll be able to tell. It's almost like you can get a sonar sort of feel from people. And if you're hearing a lot of noise, it may not be the right way. But if you're getting this depth of character thing from people, I think that's pretty cool. And so I think whether it's developers, partners, BDs, whatever, what I generally tend to ask is, are they here to solve a problem? Or are they here to sell a pitch, or are they just here to cash out real quickly? And actually, Binance had a pretty good system for this. We underpaid our people heavily. And, you had to be in it for the love of the sport more than just a quick paycheck, right? And, I didn't always love it every day because I didn't have as much money as the next guy, but it really set a foundation and was the correct way to do it. And so I think that's the lens that I've used for, the last almost 30 years in my business. And I think it's really powerful across all global markets as well. It's not just something that works in the West or in North America or the States or whatever, but I think it's really a litmus test for humanity almost, and I think it's something that it hasn't really failed me yet. I've made mistakes, but the overall breadth of work, I've really surrounded myself with good people, good builders, and people that are able to take these kinds of things, to the limit. And so, yeah, I think it's execution over hype. If I had to say anything, the faster you can move and make stuff happen, it's great. The more you have to talk about what you're going to do, it gets a little old quick.
Absolutely, completely agree with everything you said, and it kind of gives you the signs of whether this thing's going to be around long term or it's going to be that quick cash grab in the Web3 space. Now, I know you guys have an incredible roadmap. The roadmap is legit. It's a long-term roadmap. Now, what have been some of the signs for you as far as long-term thinking in the Web3 space, long-term thinking for a project, and how do users get to understand that a little bit better as well?
Well, this goes back to a couple of the other questions above. I think, slogans and marketing are just not enough, And I think, these kinds of qualities in people and companies and projects and roadmaps, and they reveal themselves in structure and not in words, right? And so you'll see it in how a team manages complexity. Do they prioritize security over speed? Do they build mechanisms for transparency, or do they rely on the narrative and the marketing guy and some pretty spokesgirl? I think real builders document things really well. They iterate extremely fast. They can pivot in a heartbeat and go where the alpha is. And I think the architecture is built for volatility. It's not built to avoid volatility, and I think a lot of projects, they fear this kind of thing because that's not what they have in their DNA, and so I don't really believe in just launching things fast. I think it's important, but I think that in order to build frameworks that can survive regulation, competition, and time, one of the biggest signs that you can look to is if they talk less about hype and more about infrastructure and what they're building in the ecosystem. And that's where I believe the lasting value in Web3 is going to be. There's a ton of people that can say a lot of words, but there's not that many people out there. I mean, literally there's less than 100,000 people out there in the whole world of 8 billion or whatever that can build these kind of products. Like, think about that. Maybe 200,000-300,000, but that's the limit right now. And so how are we going to build these things that we need with such a small percentage of the people? It really takes a lot of scrutiny and wisdom at the end of the day to be able to decipher who's who in this thing. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's less hype, more building, really is the way I think about it.
Absolutely agree with that. And now we've seen, AI bleed over into the DeFi space, into the crypto space, and completely shape the way we kind of use this entire space. Before AI, DeFi was a completely different place. And then I was one of the first people to actually talk about DeFi on YouTube. If you go back years and years and years and look at my content, you're going to see I was one of the first people to talk about DeFi in general on YouTube at its inception. So things are changing. Users are changing how they look at the space. The behaviors are changing massively. So how do you see kind of this convergence of DeFi and AI shaping the way users actually behave in the next 1 year, 3 years, or even 5 years from now, and how that's going to shape our behavior in general?
Well, hold on. I'm going to pull out the crystal ball. This shit don't work like it used to. Trust me. But no, no, man. I think there's a couple things that I can hit on, but at the end of the day, I really can't tell you. I have no idea. But I think what we will see is autonomous capital. I think we'll see people trading outcomes and not manual trades and rebalancing and these kinds of things. I think in 3 to 5 years, users won't be trading the way they do today. I think they'll let AI handle the logic behind it. And I think, you'll have these like little slide rulers that say, how much do you want to make today? And how much are you willing to risk? And, there'll be these sort of outcome based things, and I think the entire UX of finance is about to change. Right. And so I think it's going to go a lot more from transactional, like, okay, push this button and, put your number in and you'll get you get what you get. I think it's really going to go more towards a strategic way of thinking about markets and hedging and betting on these things, right? And so at Aurum, we're already building that future. Like, that's literally what we're making today. And we're not perfect, and we make mistakes, but we're pretty far advanced, and we're ahead of a lot of people in this sort of outcome based trading sort of scenario, right? And so I think systems that don't just react to what the market is and don't just react to the historical, but can anticipate the future moves and can anticipate the psychology of the market, these kinds of things. I think those are going to be the things that at the end of the day are going to win this race. But I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but there's one thing that I'm sure about, and that is that the AI is going to totally change the way we think about markets, the way we trade, and the way that we do this business that is our business right now, right? And so I think it's, if I had to sum it up in one word, it would be outcome driven technologies as opposed to transactional technologies. That's what I see happening now. How that shapes out, how that plays out, if it's 1 year, if it's 5 years, like I don't have all those answers, but I do know that we're building the types of technologies that people are going to be using to sort of shift from transactions to focusing on outcomes. Oh, I want to make 3%, in a day, a week, a month, a year. How can I do that? And what are some of the risk parameters that I'll need to tweak to get that done? I think that's what I see happening. And again, I'm going to put the crystal ball away now because it shit don't work like it used to. So
tell me about my portfolio now. Where's that sucker going? No, man, it's true though. It's gonna be there's gonna be a shift. There's gonna be a shift in the space for sure. And I think people are gonna be trying to just simplify things as much as possible, especially for the average Joe. Especially for the guys that are, new in the space, or the guys that haven't, invested, and all they're invested in is their stock portfolio, or their GICs at the bank, or their RRSPs and stuff, that want to try something else different. They're gonna make it more user friendly for those guys. I feel like that's where the space should be kind of heading towards, is to not just go after the crypto guys, or the nerds, or the this or that. Kind of go after the general public. Make it more simplified in that manner.
I would say financial managers and portfolio managers, they should start learning this stuff.
They should start chilling, is what they need to do.
Yeah, because we're coming for them.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And we kind of we touched on the licensing, and the potential of certifications, and what Aurum's doing as far as trying to work towards that. But how does Aurum demonstrate trust structurally? Not just through the communication, but through more licensing, more transparency, and user control over funds. And I know we talked a little bit about this, but maybe we could just break it down a little bit more, as far as where you're planning on taking this altogether.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question, and that's something that I've thought about a lot. Before joining Aurum. As I join Aurum, I'm sure, well into the future, I'll be thinking about this as well. Because if you look at where Binance came from, when I started at Binance, we didn't have that many, regulated entities or jurisdictions that we were operating in. Now, we weren't doing anything unethical or wrong, or we weren't stealing people's money, but still, the regulator didn't really like
taxes.
that. Yeah. Hey. The information is out there. That's like saying, I'm going to give you a soccer ball and you're evading tax. You're like, don't kick it the wrong direction. It's like, I can't control what happens when people get that out of there. So I think that I see it similar with what we're doing here at Aurum. I think that, we have a long way to go, and we're working really hard on that. Right now, we're licensed in both Dubai and Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So those are our two jurisdictions where we have, we have our entities and whatnot. But I think it goes beyond that, right? Like it goes to no hidden lockups. It goes to users being able to track the performance in real time. It goes to a public team. It's like, I'm here, my face is on this. Our CMO and our other founder, Ahmed, he's at the forefront of this. And we're people that are fairly well known in the industry, and, people know where I live if they need to. It's like, it's not that hard, and so I think that's a huge thing as well. I think our infrastructure is really designed for clarity and not complexity. We're not trying to muddy the waters. We're not, octopus that we shoot ink and try and get away. We're built a framework where users don't have to guess. And the trust is structural. So we've built that in from the beginning, and it's like I said, everything is verifiable. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we got a long ways to go, and we're working hard on that. But we've taken good strides in the early days here, and I think we're doing better than most AI projects.
Absolutely. No, I think this whole AMA, this whole interview session, kind of answers all the questions that anybody's gonna have towards Aurum, because you're a very knowledgeable guy, tons of experience, and it's a huge pleasure for you to give us the time, hop on the channel, fully transparent, fully doxed, and kind of go through everything as far as the infrastructure, as far as the architecture, as far as the full system with us is hugely appreciated. And we appreciate you for that. And it is 2025, man. It's the year. The year is going to be over in what, 6, 7, 8 months. It's the year that we got to absolutely smash it now before going into 2026. So why do you think, kind of just wrapping this whole thing up? I know you got a lot of stuff to do. You're a busy guy. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but kind of just wrapping this whole thing up. Why Aurum? Why Aurum being the ecosystem to really look out for in 2025?
Well, I think a lot of things are being commoditized before they're understood, and I think AI is a really powerful tool, and I think the same thing is happening there. I think like any powerful tool, it needs constraints, it needs ethics, it needs responsible development. And when I lead a team that builds AI bots, I don't just ask how much can we get out of this, right? Like that's not the first question. My first question is how can we not lose, right? What happens if it fails? What's the downside risk? Like I'm a risk manager since, the last 30 years almost. And so to me, that's the level of thinking that we need in this industry. We need more grown-ups in this industry and less, kids that are trying to make their way in the world and hit a home run. And I think, if I have to sum it up in a sentence or two, I think it's really, we're not following the market. We're not following a trend. It seems like a trend, and it seems like, oh, you're doing AI bots, so that's old, and everyone's doing that, and it's long. But we're doing something way more complex than that, and way better than that. I'd say we're building the next layer of the market, right? And so, what does this mean? It means it's intelligent. It means it's transparent, and I think it's engineered for long-term value. Those are the key sort of components that I want to bring to this. And at the end of the day, I think Aurum really can have a big part in shifting the narrative away from scams, away from fast money, away from all these things that crypto has sort of fallen prey to. And I think if we can build an intelligent, transparent, long-term value for our customers and our users, we're gonna do okay, and so that's what I'm focused on. And I promise to do my very best. Sometimes, some days it's not enough, but that's all I got. So
hey man, we hear you. I really love what you guys are doing. I love the message, and I love what the team has been doing so far. I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next couple of months or a couple of years as well. Hopefully, we get a chance to bring you back on the channel, maybe closer to the end of the year, and see what the updates are, man. See what you've been up to. It's really interesting to see this AI and DeFi space shape the way they're shaping together right now, and it's guys like yourself, man, that's pushing that technology forward. Again, like my early days in the crypto space, I was probably more about like trying to make money and profits off of crypto. But you get to a point where you're like, okay, yeah, now it's about technology. I need to push this space forward. And when you have a big voice in the space too, you hold that a little bit of responsibility to try to put out the things that are going to help people and help the space grow altogether. So I really appreciate you for that, man, and we really appreciate you jumping on the channel today and bringing us all this amazing information about Aurum, and hopefully we can bring you back on the channel if you have some time and we can go through it again. But I think we covered some very essential things today. I think this video is going to be very helpful for people that either don't know about Aurum or already are a part of Aurum that want to find out more information about it. I think this is going to be very helpful. So I'm going to make sure all the links to the platform are down in the description below for you guys. You guys are going to be able to check out everything about Aurum, and anything else you need from me, brother, you always have direct contact to me, and we really appreciate you, my man.
Yeah, I know. Same here. It's a promise. I'll be back here. Let's see how it goes over the next 6-8 months, and we'll come back and shoot the shit and talk a little bit about these things, and it'll be fun to reminisce. But yeah, thanks for having us, and we're pretty excited about
100%. If I'm in Dubai, man, if I'm in Dubai next time, I'm definitely coming to check you out. Just know that.
Yeah, come either there or Colombia, man. So you got like two fun places you can come see me at. So
yeah, I might have to go to Colombia instead, boys. Hey man.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, brother.
Cheers. All right, cheers.